record at the bottom.
Hi.
Hi guys. I just burned Miss Young pretty hard. She didn't know where the record button was. I said it's the one that says record at the bottom of the screen. That's the button. So
Just so we're clear, record is not, I'm so red. Record is not at the bottom of my screen. Record is at the top of my screen in the more. Okay? All right.
whatever.
Welcome to 3.5 to 3.7B.
Part two.
Part 2.
Part B. Wait, no, 2. Whatever. Okay, go.
Today we're going to talk about describing elements of a well-designed experiment.
And then maybe sometime tomorrow we'll actually start a video normally.
Probably not.
Probably not. All right, let's talk about some essential knowledge.
Okay, go.
Okay. In a well-designed experiment, in the last section, we talked about an experiment versus a sample, right? We talked when an experiment is when you actually do something, you actually are changing something to someone. So in a well-designed experiment, we want to be able to do some kind of comparison. And that's where we take 2 groups and we want to see if one where we don't do anything, that's called the control group. And then the experimental group is the one that we mess with, okay? You want to keep going, or you want to?
Well, I muted myself because there was a helicopter outside that was really loud.
Okay, well, I'll just keep on talking then. There's a random assignment. So what we're going to do is we're going to have all these people, and this is happening actually right now with the vaccines and everything, or any kind of medical trial. And she just left. Okay, so we can talk about whatever we want, but we're going to keep on talking. So we got a bunch of people or things that we're going to experiment, and we're going to randomly assign it. Some we're going to get in the control group where we don't do anything, and then the experimental group where we do the treatment. Okay, and then we also need to have replication. Replication means I can't like have 2 people or 2 bugs or 2, I need lots and lots of experiments. So I need to have a reasonable number of items in each group so that I don't have just weird random chance coming into play. So when I have one person or one thing, it could just be random chance that it worked. Thank gosh she's back. And we also finally want to control for what's called confounding errors. We want to control outside influences, anything that might mess up our experiment. So we don't want to, we call that control. We have a measure of control. And that can be, in certain experiments, we might want to control the temperatures. We might want to control the amount of medicine or something. So we'll talk about that in an example. And we were talking about the experiment about the scientists, about the gender bias. So we're going to come back to that. And I don't know if Miss Young wants to talk. I'm going to keep talking until she tells me to shut up. She's just laughing.
Listen, at the same time, I had my window open, a helicopter and a train. Both. It was so loud. Okay.
You do not have control of your lesson right now.
I don't. Okay, so here's what happened. If you'll remember, there was the potential discrimination in females in STEM fields. Okay, you were so matched. It's impressive.
We all match.
Yes, there's so much purple happening. It's lovely. So we looked at, okay, we said, okay, here's an experiment, an actual experiment where they interviewed 2 people with the exact same resume. The only difference is the gender, right? They changed the name from John to Jennifer.
Right. We had very bland, or not bland, but just very middle of the road.
Right. Like you're not going to judge somebody based on this thing.
Yeah. And so that was our experiment to see if the name had, and the reason there was the resumes are similar and they were sent to the same places, that's the control. Okay.
Right. So first part of an experiment is, what are we comparing, right? We are going to compare something in every experiment. Otherwise, it's not much of an experiment. So in this case, our comparison was John and Jennifer.
Which was our representation of gender.
Right. So we've met the first criteria of an experiment comparing at least 2 treatments. Okay, next part of an experiment is your random assignment. So if I take my people, just split them in the middle, And it says, what if I assigned tier 1 university labs to get John and tier 2 labs to get Jennifer?
Well,
What might
that's
happen, right?
well, that is different. Yeah, there are different levels of labs, so that's like messing things up, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right. So this is what's called confounding, because now we don't know if it's like a bias within the labs themselves, or if it's the gender, or like we don't know, right? So we've got to randomly assign from both to try to get rid of, is it the lab or is it the gender? Okay, so now we're going to take our same people, our tier 1s and our tier 2s, and we're going to just randomly assign. How could we randomly assign them, Mr. Bobby?
Well, I got like 4 tier 1s there, so I could do 2 Jennifers and 2 Johns to tier 1, and then 2 Jennifers and 2 Johns to tier 2. So I'm going to do a little bit of subdividing to get it randomly assigned. So I have to make sure they're properly mixed, like cookie batter.
Right, right. Or I could say, okay, stand out line, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, and I could just assign them all a number, and then I could randomly assign those numbers as well. So I could make sure that I block them into 2 to here, 2 to here, 2 to here, 2 to here, or I could like mix bag it and literally pull numbers out of a hat, right? I could do that too.
When you are doing this on an AP question, you do need to say, you need to say randomly assign to the different groups.
Right, right. So we're talking about things that you have to explain in an experiment. I've got to have some kind of comparison. I need to talk about it. I've got to randomly assign. I need to explain how I'm going to do it. Okay. Then what is that random assignment doing for us? Well, it's creating balance and kind of as much as possible getting rid of our confounding factors so that we can now make inferences about that explanatory variable. There's your stats words. You want to turn those into real words, Mr. Bobby?
You want to mix it up?
Want to mix it up? Okay, so.
I got a Mr. Bobby eyes it, I can't think of all these fancy words. You guys
Right.
need to think of fancy words, but whatever.
A little bit of terminology here. There's sampling. Do you remember what sampling is?
That's where I'm looking and just gathering data from the bigger population. I'm not able to look at everybody, so I'm just taking a small cluster from it.
So if I'm talking about all the kids at Lakeside High School, the football team would be a sample. Would they be a good sample to represent the student population?
Probably not, because they are probably maybe all the same gender, but they all have some of the similar interests. We don't maybe have as many students on the football team are interested in the arts or music or some other things.
Right.
So we probably want to make sure we are not, that would be called bias. We'd be getting the football team's opinion about things if we only use them.
Right. So we random sample. We've talked about this. We random sample to get rid of the bias so that we get everybody's opinions in the mix. Right? We want everybody's opinions, but we just want to make sure we get them all. And then we also randomly assign. So we take our random sample and then we randomly assign. And they do 2 different things for us. The random sampling reduces the bias. The random assignment reduces confounding.
And they're parallel, but remember, in an experiment, we're actually doing something to these groups, right? Versus sampling, where we're just asking people or getting some data about things as they are, and we don't know exactly what they are, but now we're trying to figure that out in a sample. But in an experiment, we're trying to figure out, if I do something, can I change something?
Right. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about then is replication. So we're comparing, and then we are randomly assigning, and now we are replicating. What do we mean by replicating?
Well, replicate means, like, to me, the word means make a copy, or
Yeah. So if we just had,
replicated your homework. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that.
We've replicated each other's t-shirts.
Yeah, we did. We replicate, or copies of each other. That's a nicer example.
Right before we started, right before I was going to hit record, Mr. Bobby said, "Are you going to change to purple?" Because I was wearing black. So replication.
Look at the shirt.
It is beautiful. Who would want to change out of that?
I know.
So if we just had 2 experimental units, in this case, 2 faculty members that we randomly assigned, okay? So here we go. We're going to randomly assign them. Done. What would happen?
That's a pretty simple experiment, but I can't tell if it's the professors or the faculty members or the, or the resumes or what. There's just one weird thing, and all of a sudden that's the only data I got. I don't have enough data, so I need to have more people looking at more data.
Right. And so the example here is like, what if maybe one of the faculty members was having a bad morning while reading the application? Well, now you got all his anger at his bad morning dumping all over the experiment. So you really need to have multiple eyes on it. Or doesn't have to be eyes on it. Of course, there's lots of things we could do, but multiple, in this case, faculty members, so that we know that it's not chance, right?
Anything can happen once.
Right. If I had 2 tomato plants and I planted them in 2 different soils, and I said, "Oh, this one grew better, this soil is better," off of 1 plant, would you believe me?
That's probably not enough. You might have just gotten a bad plant.
Right. I could have got a lemon.
I see what you did there.
All right, so we got 127 faculty members. 127.
Remember, this is a real experiment. So to get validity, they up the number from just 2 to 127. Now, if there's that one guy who had a bad cup of coffee in the morning, his read of the resume isn't going to totally wipe out my experiment.
Right, exactly right. So I replicated. I randomly assigned. Pow. Am I good?
I think there was one more thing on that essential knowledge thing.
There is one more thing. It's the control. There has to be something about the experiment in which we control to deal with the confounding, or maybe multiple things that we control, to deal with the confounding factors. And this is the thing that we're always trying to deal with, because I want to be able to say as much as possible, nope, I think this because of this, right? And if there's other stuff mixed in, then my argument is not as strong, okay? And so in this case,
people pick you apart because your resume is, and they can. It's valid. If there's a reason they can argue, then you don't have control of your experiment.
Right. So we made the application, we didn't, but these people made their application completely identical except for gender. And then then you can start to say, like, wait, why did that happen? If there is some large difference in the people who picked John and the people who picked Jennifer, then you can begin to say, gosh, if you randomly assigned and there's no difference in the resume at all, maybe it is gender, right? Then you begin to say, I might be convinced. Okay.
That's part 2.
That's it. That's part B. Those are your 4 parts of your experiment, and we will continue this on in the next video.